This podcast is rated ES for extremely silly and may contain bad words, bad jokes, and other bad content that is not suitable for children. Or maybe it is. We don't know. We're not their parents. You're listening to the Starforge podcast with Scya and Mal, two nerds who have a lot to say about Star Wars: The Old Republic and all its features. Rest assured, the podcast is working as intended. This is episode 11. To click or not to click? That is the question. To click or not to click? That is the question. Whether 'tis easier for the hand to suffer the many clickings of the left mouse button, or to bind thy skills to hotkeys on the keyboard. For by clicking slowly your parse will dwindle. No more. A gaming mouse will end the handache and the sorrow you will feel. To bind, to click, there's the rub. For binding brings 40 to 55 APM, and good numbers will come. Hello, SWTOR players. I am Mal.
Hey, everybody.
I'm the resident clown of the Starforge podcast.
Would you say you're a jester?
Absolutely. And you people can't see me, but I've got on the hat with the bells, the crazy shoes, all of it. Scya, what's up? I haven't seen you in a while. Did you have a lovely break?
Right, we took a little break for Thanksgiving, and as soon as that happened, we got news about the expansion, which I laughed my butt off. Here I am sitting at Canada, trying not to think too hard about my gaming needs, and someone texts me, sends me a text. Hey, did you see that we got the expansion release date? As I'm like trying to ignore my family and go to my happy place where I'm not thinking about what 40 videos I'm going to be making.
I didn't text you, but I messaged you on Discord. I was right. What do I win? Morgan and I were right.
I saw you saying that. There's been a lot of players having a lot of fun who are guessing when the date would come out. A couple of you guys got to play as well. And surprisingly, the second most guessed date was the actual date of the expansion. For anyone who missed it, it will be coming out on December 14th, 2021. But don't worry. If you're listening to this podcast way later down the road, we're going to be talking about a very eternal topic today.
Yes, we are. As I mentioned in my brief SWTOR Spirian monologue, today we are going to be talking about the UI in SWTOR and keybinding versus clicking. And we couldn't decide whether these were group or solo, or whether they disappointed other people, or whether they just disappointed you yourself alone. So we mashed it up. Disappointing other people while flying solo. All right, so today in this Disappointing Other People While Flying Solo mashup, we are going to tackle two topics that, in my opinion, go hand in hand. Making the SWTOR UI work for you, and keybinding versus clicking. So, let's talk about the UI first. So, Scya, tell me a little bit about what your screen looks like.
Oh, my screen is so incredibly boring. I've seen some really, really creative UIs. I've seen people recreate UIs and user interfaces from other games that they love. Maybe they play a different MMORPG and they'll recreate it in SWTOR. I've seen ones that almost don't even look like they're SWTOR. They're so different because you have such a huge amount of customization when it comes to where you place things in the UI. But mine is almost default. I literally just load up the extended UI and make a very small amount of changes to it. One of the major ones I turn on is target of target, and that's pretty much it. Half the time I'm playing with the advanced UI and I don't even notice. Mal, do you use basics or do you have a custom thing that you've set up?
I actually have a very long list of things. So do you want to talk about yours before I list all this massive wall of shit that I have to share?
Yeah, because I know you have some really great tips and probably some that I should be applying to myself, especially because most of the time I just use the same UI across all my characters, especially DPS and tanking, pretty much exactly the same. The only one that I do a major difference for is when I'm healing. I'm a fairly new healer, and I'm not a very good healer. I kind of got thrown into the fray, and I mostly heal for operations for either 8 to 16 and occasionally 24 people. So what I did to help myself, especially to help myself focus on the task at hand, which is healing everyone, not tanking. Sometimes that gets confusing. I made my health bars huge. Like, they are just ginormous. I like to live stream, so often sometimes people will see me playing and they will complain because they can't see what's going on in the actual fight when we've got a full 24 people for a world boss, because all you can see is health bars from here to there and everywhere. It makes it so much easier for me, though, to be able to see everyone's names, to see their debuffs and especially their debuffs, sometimes their buffs, and so that I can really focus on the act of healing. I know you, like you said, you play a little bit of everything. Did you want to give people some tips and ideas about how you have yours set up?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think there are a couple key things in the UI that when I'm in groups with people, I have seen it would help them. These tips will help people, especially people who are newer to ops, especially people who are newer to Nightmare ops, who maybe don't know all the tips and tricks in the UI. So here's my number one tip for the UI. Open the UI, click in the operations frame, scroll to the bottom, and make sure the show only removable debuffs box is never, ever, 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 ever fucking checked. Ever. It does not work right. It is a piece of shit. If you check it sometimes, debuffs that you need to cleanse might not show up.
I've seen this setting before, and part of becoming a better healer, apart from selecting someone and mashing the green buttons on your ability bar, is learning how to cleanse, especially in the harder operations. Even in story mode and Banter mode, you can practice a lot of cleansing. And I have seen this setting before. Does it actually not work? Like, is it actually that bad as you're describing it?
It does not work. I don't know what it is about how they have coded some of the debuffs, but it does not work on the cleanses in Revan. And I know it doesn't work on the cleanses in the Trandoshans fight in hard mode Duxon.
That's so scary. How are you supposed to know that as a new healer? Or even as a raider? I've never even heard about that before. And I run Nightmare mode, just not usually healing.
It's really really unfortunate. The other reason to never ever check that box is if somebody has a debuff on them, even if it's not cleansable, it is good to know that it's on them. Let's say, for example, tonight I was pulling Nightmare DP. When you pull Tyrants and Nightmare DP, he puts a little green angry face on a couple people throughout the fight. And that ticks for a lot of damage. I need to see, okay, these 3 people have this green grumpy face. I should put a bubble on them to help mitigate the damage. You know now who is taking damage and how to prioritize your heals.
There's a lot of fights like that are actually like that. You can't cleanse the debuff, but it helps a lot to know who's about to take a lot of damage. That's crazy. Okay. So turn that on, apparently. Or rather, don't turn it off.
Don't ever check that box. But now you're going to say to me, but Mal, now my bars look fucking crazy. There's these debuffs and buffs everywhere and everything is a cluttered mess and nothing fits. All right, here's my next tip. In that same operations frame, my debuff size is 0.7 and my buff size is 0.1. Debuffs big, buffs itsy bitsy minuscule, because why the fuck do I care about the buffs other people have? I care about what debuffs they have so I know who needs attention.
I think I may have even turned my buffs off altogether or made them so small I can't even see them because I don't care about the fact that you're about to make it rain with DPS. I do not. I am just looking for my special little buffs and debuffs that are related to being a healer and you about to die. There's a lot of clutter on the screen, though. You had some more tips about dealing with that as well.
Yeah, there is. And one of the biggest debates I have with people when they see screen grabs of my UI is I have health text and percentages on enemies and the bosses. I don't have it on people in the raid. And they say, how do you heal like that without knowing the numbers and the percentages? I guess because I've been doing it so long, I don't care.
I've seen a lot of people tell me, hey, you need to turn that on. And I'm like,
why?
No, it's not. Either you're a quarter dead, you're an eighth dead, or you're halfway dead. The rest of the way doesn't matter to me. But I think for some people, guesstimating how full that bar is can be really difficult. So that's definitely going to be a preference thing.
Absolutely. But I'm telling you, if you don't turn those on, it's okay. Because if you get into a groove where you can eyeball it, I can eyeball it. And so I don't clutter my vision up with a bunch of numbers that to me are meaningless because, if you're low, you're low. I can see that. Like, your bar is not full.
When I heal you, I'ma eyeball your health so hard.
Yeah. They should just do that in healthcare. The doctor should just look at you and go, your bar seems pretty full.
You look like garbage. You just look like garbage so bad.
You're looking a little
best
low.
Care.
Take 2 of these and call me in the morning. So what I do instead is I bump up the health width and the height. I do the width at about 144 and the height about 20. So it's a nice, probably not as large and in charge as your health bars, but, some significant fat red lines there.
You've given a ton of great tips so far, specifically for healers, but we both play a couple different roles, like we play tank, healer, DPS. On my tank, I actually don't care if you're low on health most of the time. I need to see the bars at a glance, but I have mine teeny tiny on my tank, like barely visible, way out of the way, so they cover the least amount of the screen as possible, because I just need to know if you're all the way dead. Well, unless you're my fellow co-tank, it's the healer's problem and it's your problem. Or if you're dying because I'm killing you, don't worry. I'm well aware. I don't need to see your health bar.
Right. Definitely when I'm on tank and DPS, I do make that operations frame a little bit smaller. I have seen some people, though, make their little frame so itsy bitsy small that, in my opinion, kills their raid awareness to a certain degree. So I don't make mine ever like super duper itsy bitsy small to the point where I don't know what's going on. Because sometimes it's helpful to be able to see, oh, everybody's low. I'm on a gunslinger. I'm going to pop a shield. So speaking of raid awareness, here's one thing that I started doing recently, especially because I've been doing harder content, both tanking and DPSing, is I took my debuff tray completely off the bar at the bottom of the screen on my character. I bumped it up. The scale is now 1.1 and the icon scale is 0.9. And I put that sucker smack, not in the middle of my screen, but in the center, just raised off my quick bar a little bit so that it is in my line of sight. And I have found this to be so incredibly useful so that I've got a dot on me, pop a cooldown. I've got this on me. I need to cleanse it. Oh, I have, I'm stunned. I need help. I need something.
And you're giving it this advice at a nightmare mode level of rating, but I think this is a fantastic piece of advice for any player that's even going into story mode, veteran mode, operations, or even the harder flashpoints. So basically what a debuff bar is when something hurts you. When something hurts you, and it's not just damage that kind of takes your health away and leaves. A debuff is what lets you know something bad is happening to you. So either you're taking damage over time, or some other effect is happening. Often it's your armor's been horribly reduced and you're about to take a lot of damage if you get hit again. As a tank especially, even in the easier operations, debuffs are a big part of learning to tank swap or knowing when to be into a different position during the fight. So being able to see those debuffs, they normally appear kind of near your character portrait, a little bit above your abilities. Being able to see them loud and clear, well, visually loud and clear, is that a word, Mal?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Big and beautiful is what we're looking for.
You've got garbage on you. Look out, look out.
You really want those visible because they are way, way, way too small to be useful for most UIs by default.
Absolutely, absolutely. And honestly, on some of my characters, especially my tanks, I have taken to breaking out a new quick bar and also putting that kind of up over my character portrait in the center of the screen. So I'll have this row of cooldowns and above it, my debuffs. That way, I know what I'm working with. I'll talk about how I keybind them later, but on every class, I've got my cooldowns, my adrenals, my relics, sometimes my med pack, so I know when I will have those cooldowns, because that's very useful, especially when you're tanking. You can say, oh, I'm holding the boss. Let's say I'm tanking terror. Okay, I'm going to hold him. All right, I can keep him for 2. All right, I'm using Inure. All right, I'm popping Saber Ward. All right, I'm popping, the man dancing with 2 lightsaber, the man with the lightsaber over his head. All right, I'm out of cooldowns. You take him. So you take him. And then perhaps a few minutes later, you say, I'm out of cooldowns. And I say, I've got one coming off in 10 seconds. I got Saber Ward in 10 seconds. Just hold on, Saya, hold on.
I'm not going to make it. This is a great, great tip for new players as well, to group your defensive abilities together. Mal's talking about all kinds of cooldowns that she's got across the spectrum, but for new players, you can start by just putting your different defensive abilities together on your bar. Like put them sandwiched together. You'll have between 3 and 5 depending on your class and depending on the changes coming up. And that way, when there's an emergency, you can see what you have available. Oh my gosh, I just lost 90% of my health. I'm going to button mash 1 or 2 of these, and then maybe you'll get healed, and a few seconds later, you're down a bunch of your health again. You can see right away which ones you have available. This is really important as a tank, but even as a damage player, it can be really, really useful. For example, today I decided to run some flashpoints. We got a group of all 4 damage players. I did have a taunt on that character, and whenever I saw the other player was getting low, I could taunt, and I knew exactly what I had available to defend myself for those few short seconds before I got nuked out of orbit.
Right. So now you want to know, how do I know when these skills will be available to me? Because all I see is this stupid white line slowly lowering itself like a guillotine on my debuff and buff bar. On my buff bar.
Thank you for describing that. I never have any idea how to describe to new players what that looks like. It looks like a countdown timer. Well, not actually. It's kind of like the opacity is lowering. It's like I don't even know. There's no really good way to describe it. But when you see movement from the top to the bottom of your abilities, that's the time until you can use that ability again. But how do you know exactly how long that is? Sometimes it looks like it's going to be a few seconds, and sometimes that line is barely moving.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like a wiper blade going around, like a clock. Clock with a wiper blade. Anyway, on the quick bar, not on my debuff or buff bar, on my quick bar. Get it right now. So listen, under preferences, user interface, there's something called cooldown settings. I have checked off the boxes for show ready flash, show global cooldown ready flash, and show cooldown text. And the cooldown text is the most important bit, because when you use a skill, it will show you a countdown clock with numbers and not a windshield wiper or a slowly falling guillotine that tells you when it will be up again. So I can glance at my bar and know I have my adrenal coming off cooldown in 5 seconds. Don't worry, the heals are coming.
This is super useful even to new players. Experienced players can use this to perfection time their abilities, but new players can get a better idea of how often they can use their abilities. So for example, when I'm trying out a brand new class and I click a new ability, I usually don't know when can I use it again. When you turn that cooldown text on, which isn't on by default for some reason, you can see, hey, I can use this attack ability every 30 seconds or so, or hey, I used my defensive button. Oh, it's not going to be available again for another 3 minutes or so, and it'll really help you learn how often you can use stuff.
Absolutely. And in that same screen is also a box you check for buffs and debuffs to highlight triggered abilities, which brings me to my next point.
Hey,
Saya, you're so good. You already use this. It is a setting.
I got 1 out of 10 settings.
Woo! It is called Target of Target. And every person in this game needs to turn this on. Every person.
Everyone. All of you. Tanks, DPS, healers, all. Do it now. I have no idea why it's not on by default.
Companion, call your companions. They need Target of Target too. Maybe they'd be less crappy if they had fucking Target of Target. Preferences, controls. In the very first box, General, check off Enable Focus Target. Then you can adjust your focus target settings to help you help yourself stay on top of all of your dots and good stuff like that. Now, Scya, for some people who don't know, because this box is not checked off by default because the game wants people to fail, apparently, tell the good listeners what target of target is.
So target of target, especially as a tank, is one of my favorite settings in the entire game. So you're attacking a boss. If the boss is attacking you back, specifically it's targeted you, you'll show up, your little picture will show up in the target of target. So as a tank, I want the boss to be attacking me. Now, if the boss switches to another member of your group, it'll show their portrait. How is this useful for you as a damage player? If you're a damage player and you see your character is in the target of target, you've done something horribly wrong. You have the attention of the boss and you're about to get mauled. If you see that, you can A, try and use an aggro dump, which means you say, boss, leave me alone. Or 2, you might want to use some defensive abilities. Or 3, heck, maybe you even want to run away by foot. Whatever time you can buy yourself until the tank can pick things back up again. And that goes for the healers too, especially during operations. And if you have a newer tank especially, your damage characters and your healers are more likely to grab the attention of the boss. And seeing that target of target box there gives you a heads up about that damage that you're about to get from the boss directly.
Right. A great example of this is, I forget what he's called because we don't do KP and we don't do EV.
Bone
in my guild.
Thrasher.
It's banned. Bone Thrasher. It's not a mystery. People think it's magic that you know who Bone Thrasher is targeting, the person that needs to stand still when he's doing that one attack. Focus target. And then you'll see who he switches to. Then that one person stands still and everybody else get out of the way. It's not magic.
So we're actually talking about 2 different settings here. One is called target of target, and that's what we just explained. And there's another kind of more obscure setting called focus target. And this one isn't turned on or accessible. Like you'll press the button and nothing will happen. And focus target is a little different. Focus target lets you choose a friend or an enemy. You'd click them, select them first, and then you can press Alt F. And pressing Alt F only works if you have this turned on in the settings. It'll make a focus target show up on the top of the screen, a big little interface that will show their portrait, their health, their debuffs, and all that kind of stuff. So the first way you can use it is to keep an eye on an enemy or a friend. In my case, I like to use it to keep an eye on my fellow tank or my fellow tank's boss if we're doing a 2-boss fight. You can also use it to easily switch between targets. Do you take a lot of advantage of focus target, Mal?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a great way if there is a lot of riffraff running around in an op for one person to say, my target. And then whoever's talking, click their name in the raid frame, boop, their target pops up. Click that target and go to town. So easy. Or actually, I think you can keybind even. Pick up focus target's target. But another way that focus target is so helpful, you talked about how it's helpful for a tank. For a healer, it's helpful. You can see who the boss is focusing on. But for a DPS, especially if you have dots like a TK Sage, any of the guns, anyone who's got debuffs, it is so useful to do focus target because there are things in the UI that can help you. For example, my focus target in the UI, that box, it has the enabled box checked. I have the boss's debuffs at 0.85 so that I can see what I'm doing to him. His buff's at 0.65 because I still need to see, if the boss is about to do something or it has a certain buff. I check off show information text and also check off highlight buffs for any duration and debuffs any duration, sort options, check off personal buffs, buff sort type, apply time, personal debuffs, check, debuff sort time, apply time.
Whew.
That all sounds crazy. Fucking crazy. I can take a picture or write it down. I'm sure you can read a guide about it. But what this is going to do, I might even cut that out later because as I said it, it sounded like total fucking nonsense. But anyway, what all those settings are going to do is when you have a target focused, your buffs are going to be highlighted in a colorful little yellow box. So if you have two sages in the group, both doing TK, both putting weaken mind on the boss, yours is highlighted in a nice little yellow box. And
you can do that? I didn't know. I've been having that exact problem where if I have two players of the same combat style and you can't tell which one's yours. Oh my god. Thank you.
Yes. And what I talked about with the sorting, it will sort them so that they will be the first debuffs that you see on the boss will be yours. So they won't be lost up in the crazy clutter of the massive amount of 80 debuffs that go on a raid boss. You will see yours and it will be in a little box so that you know if it's fallen off. So useful.
You have one last tip to reduce and reuse clutter.
Yeah. Turn off shit you don't need, or make it really small. My menu bar is tiny. A max level. My XP bar, it's gone.
Bye.
Legacy bar, I can't remember the last time I looked at that thing. See ya, couldn't care less. Oh, Scya took away the thing I wrote about the alignment button, because I couldn't care less about that either. I picked a side and then poofed it off my UI.
BioWare's deleting it for you, don't worry.
They just really take our good advice, Scya, about what they should delete out of their game.
We've had a really, really good talk about the UI. There's a ton that you can change. A lot of it's up to you. Some settings, if you're going to be doing group content, especially operations, you really should turn them on. But a lot of them are really, really up to you. There's another big topic that's, I'd say it's really up to you, but I think that's a lot more up for debate. And I think a lot of people would scream me down that I'm wrong.
Scya, fair Scya, renowned streamer and podcaster, I hear that you are renowned, fair Scya, across the land for your clicking of your skills. Tell me, fair Scya, how many mice do you go through in a year?
6,321 mice per year. All right. I have mentioned it before, but I am a clicker. Well, actually, I'm a hybrid. I don't only click, and I do something that works for me, and that's what I was talking about earlier. It's up for debate, but honestly, whatever's going to work for you is the best method, and I'm going to stick by that advice till I am rolling in my grave. They'll be rolling me with an automated mouse clicker by then. I understand it's not the fastest way. If you're looking for speed, the fastest way to activate your abilities is always going to be through 100% keybinding. There's not really an argument about that. But people over the years have developed various different ways to play. I've even seen a player who does nightmare mode operations while using a controller. And I figure if that player can make things happen, I don't really need to give too much grief to anyone else, no matter what type of method they're using. So you can either use a controller, not the normal way of going about things. Most nightmare mode raiders probably use mostly keybindings like Mal. You can click your way to victory. I had a friend who is a top tier healer and she clicked her way to victory in both ranked PvP and in nightmare mode operations. Or you can do something a little like what I'm doing where I have keybound about, I'd say, a third to a half of my abilities and click the rest.
So for me, I keybind everything. I always have, even before I had a fancy MMO mouse. I just used what I had. But now I have a Logitech G600 and I love it. I haven't looked back. It took me a little bit to get used to it, but I love it. And I also bind a lot on the keyboard to things that are easy for me to reach.
That was a big, important thing for me was what can I reach? And what you can reach on the keyboard is going to be really, really different from player to player. If you have smaller hands, you're not going to get very far. If you have bigger hands, you'll get a little more reach, but it's not like you can play piano on your keyboard while you're also raiding and using your mouse in your other hand. And that's where a MMO mouse comes in. It's funny because players use the word keybinding, but it can actually mean two different physical actions. It can be keybinding on your keyboard, for example, hitting Shift F or Shift 3 or Alt Shift 3 to activate an ability. but most players these days especially mean keybinding to be with an MMO mouse. And an MMO mouse is a mouse that actually has the numbers, usually I think it's 1 through 9 on the side of the mouse. Is that what you have?
I think mine is through 12.
Ooh, fancy. You got an extra couple in
it
there.
might be 15 even.
Either way,
No,
you've
it's
got
12. It's 12.
you've got a series of numbered buttons on the side of your mouse, and some players use the equivalent of the shift key on either the keyboard or on the mouse itself. So you don't have to be doing this huge strata of keys on your actual keyboard.
Right, I don't. And even on my gaming mouse, there are some I don't use just because, as you said, different hand sizes. I have very petite hands. I'm not sure if you all know this about me, but I am a lofty 5'0".
Oh, really? I never realized you're that short. Ha! You're short. I'm tall. I'm 5'4". You're short. I'm not
I
that
am
tall.
short. I am adorably short. My husband is 6 feet tall, and I wore like 5-inch heels for our wedding so that when we took pictures, we didn't look absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, so because I'm small, I have small hands. So I don't use all the buttons on my MMO mouse, and I certainly don't use all the buttons on my keyboard. But there are a few things that I absolutely use. On my mouse, the button smack in the middle with the little line so that you know your hand is in the right place is 5. And 5 is always my interrupt, because what I have found, if you play many different characters, many different classes, there is always overlap in the skills you have. Consistency is key if you're going to keybind. At least that is what I have found. I can log on to any character I have, and if I go with them anywhere, 5 is my interrupt. Doesn't matter. Tank, heal, DPS, 5 is my interrupt. Cleanse is always Shift D. Even on my tank, Shift D is the cooldown that comes with a cleanse. I use Shift a lot to compensate for what I can reach on the keyboard. I use F, G, V, R, those type of things I use a lot on the keyboard. Shift 6, always my knockback. My adrenal is always G. My breaker is always Shift G. And my movement speed buff is always pushing my mouse wheel off to the right. This mouse is actually brilliant because not only can you press the scrolling wheel down, you can push it to the left, you can push it to the right.
Oh, what?
And then you can shift them. So pretty much all of my heals on Mal are some sort of wheel press down to the left, shift to the left, shift wheel press, shift right.
Are
Wheels,
you telling me that you heal like you drive a car?
I don't know. I haven't driven a car in like 7 years.
Shifting up and down gears? Are you serious?
Hold on to your butts, everyone. Wandering men's coming off cooldown. Have some bubbles. Fourth gear potency. Does a car have a fourth gear? I don't know. I don't know shit about cars. Anyway, does your car have 4 gears?
I don't know, but I'm tall enough to reach the pedals.
Oh, fuck you. I did. I sat on a pillow when I was learning to drive. And my mom was always terrified because the first car I drove, the airbags weren't a thing. Because she was worried because I had to put the seat up so close to reach. But then airbags became a thing. And she came out to the car with a ruler. She's like, you have to be 12 inches from the steering wheel. And she stuck this ruler. I lived to tell the tale.
Well, I don't know how to segue back to talking about keybinding, so I'm laughing too hard.
I mean, we are allegedly the Comedy Central version of Swator. So anyway, I'll bring it back with this. Consistency is key. And even if you have a different spec, find the similarities. For example, I play a Sage and a Commando heal. Salvation, my AoE heal, is 6. Colto Bomb, also 6. Roaming Mend is a mouse wheel click. Successive Treatment, also a hopping heal, mouse wheel click. It can kind of differ for DPS and tanking classes, but I've found that you can keep them pretty much the same. So, Scya, tell me about that mess you have over there.
It's not a mess. I got stuck on the idea that you're asking about my car, and I wanted to tell you that I just bought a scooter.
Oh, an electric one?
Like an electric scooter, yeah.
Oh.
But when it comes to keybinds, I do the exact same thing as you. I overlap my abilities that are similar for different classes. I've got little mnemonics, though, to remember them. I've got F for fast. E is for interrupt. X is for X gonna get you, is for stun.
Oh. I thought it was X gonna give it to you.
Oh, I tried. I didn't actually have a mnemonic for X for stun. It just is.
God, they had his funeral here. I had to show you a picture of this truck that drove his coffin. It was like this giant red monster truck. The wheels must have been 4 feet high. It said Rough Riders on the side. Anyway.
What a way to go.
RIP DMX.
And for my abilities that are similar, much like Mal, I put them on the exact same place every time. So even if I forget that, X is not going to give it to you, I know that my stun is vaguely in that same spot, and I can just go slap it with my mouse. It helps so much when you're trying out new classes. It cuts down the time to learn a new class almost in half when you've got all these kind of situational abilities already figured out. You know your interrupt, you know your movement ability, you know your stun, because they're there. They're the exact same as your other characters, and you can spend your time instead learning about your rotation and your attack abilities and your buffs and how they interact with each other. I learned vigilance recently, and it's so much faster than learning my second or third class, because I only had to worry about half the attacking stuff.
Right, and you know what else? After you've set up these keybinds, your X gonna give it to you and your interrupts. For the love of everything unholy and holy, save your keybind settings so that you can use it easily across all your characters if you have duplicates or mirrors on the other side.
And this is a setting that has not always been available in the game, and a lot of players don't know that it exists. Even I didn't realize it existed and functioned well until way too recently. So you can go. What happens is you'll pick one character, set up your ability keybinds in a way that makes sense to you. Maybe your F for fast, E for interrupt, whatever you want to tell yourself. Then you're going to go on you'll go on your first character and go Escape, Preferences, Keybinds. Then you're going to look for the tab at the bottom called Keybindings, Import, Export. You can save it, and then you can hop onto any of your other characters and go to that same tab and load it. Every time I start a new character, doesn't matter if they're level 1 or from a token and a high level character, or if I'm picking up a character I haven't played in a decade, I load up those settings so they are already halfway ready to go to play.
Right, and I'm going to throw this out there also. It is very smart to go into your Swtor hidden settings folder, make a copy, zip it up, email it to yourself. That way, when you come back from vacation and you turn on your computer and your computer goes, no, I don't think so. I don't think I'll work. I know you've been gone for 2 weeks and I haven't been used, and I will take this opportunity to overheat and not work anymore. When you reinstall your game after you get your computer fixed, you won't be going, fuck, all those settings and keybinds and UI I worked so hard to create are gone.
So this is some fantastic advice from Mal. Most of your settings in the game are actually saved online, but your key bindings and your user interface are actually saved to the computer that you're playing on, and they are an actual file that you can copy, save, edit, and email to yourself. So to go find this, you're going to go into the drive that Swtor is saved on. In my case, it's in the C drive. You go into Users, find your username. You're going to go App Data, Local, Swtor Settings, Key Bindings. And that's where your key bindings will be saved in. And for user interface, it's in much the same idea. So it'll be your drive, so C drive, users, your username, App Data, Local, Swtor Settings, GUI profiles. And what I like to do is in both those folders, find the one that I'm using and just email it to myself like it's an actual file. And that way, if your computer goes on the fritz, if you decide to go play on a laptop, or even if you just want to share it to a friend, you can go to your email, download it on that second computer, and put it back in the same folder. And next time you boot up the game, it'll literally be there and you can just load it up. If you can't see these folders, you may need to turn on hidden folders. You can find this by clicking the View tab in the folder and checking off the box that says Show Hidden Items.
Yeah, so just to add to that, to save time, I usually just grab the entire settings folder and zip up that whole folder and send it to myself. When you reinstall, you will have to open the game one time to create the new folder, and then just quit the game and then copy paste your folder over the empty settings folder. But I usually grab the whole folder.
I'm scared. I just do key bindings in UI and call it a day.
Oh, so you don't take off you don't get rid of your load screen. I just burped. I'm so sorry.
I thought you were in the middle of making a dirty joke, and I was like, woo, about being safe.
If I was making a dirty joke, you and I both know that I would just make it. Pardon me, madam. Fuck, now I don't even know what I was saying.
You're saying let's segue.
All right, well, it was something really good. But anyway, and I'll throw this out as a last bit of advice.
Oh, I know what it was.
What?
It was setting up your abilities in a line.
No, I was saying something else in regards to the settings folder, and I forget now. So, last piece of advice in regards to quick bars. I read this somewhere. I forget who. Some smart person out there that makes guides and shit. I forget. It's not my own original idea, okay? But if you're learning a new spec, set up that first main quick bar as the entire rotation, even if you wind up binding the same ability multiple times. Because if you get lost, you can just start back at the beginning and go down the line, and you know if you're pressing all those buttons on that first quick bar that you're going to be doing something useful in your content.
I use that especially for my opener. For when you're playing your class, your opener is 90% of the time always the same. The rest of the fight, it's a little more fluid. But your opener, at least you can just go click, 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 click. You kind of look like an idiot if anyone sees you doing it, and they're like, why do your bars set up that way? But it works great. But Mal, I heard you had something not work so great, and I heard you had someone who did not know how to use E for interrupt, or they were too busy?
This weekend, you can't make this Sith up. People who are too busy to do more than one thing. An epidemic has been sweeping the galaxy. No, not the Rakghoul plague. We've pretty much cured that. I mean people who do group content with other people and do not or will not help. A long time ago, in a galaxy far away, a young healer took a trip to the Valley of the Machine Gods as a DPS. The group she was with was tackling Tithe, the robot of rage. In certain phases of this boss, several ads appear, some of which need to be interrupted. At some point, a DPS, who will remain nameless due to licensing restrictions, expressed the need for an extra interrupt to be thrown out on an ad by one of the healers. To this request, both healers responded that they could not, in fact, use their interrupt at all in this fight because they were too busy. As a healer main herself, this made the DPS particularly cranky, and after a quick check of the healer's numbers in the parser, she felt even grumpier. After several more failed attempts, the group ended for the evening. Perhaps these healers did not know what an interrupt was. Perhaps they were also baking desserts while raiding, and that was why they were too busy to help. Or, in this reporter's opinion, they need to f***ing get good.
Thank you so much, Mal, for that report. And how one should use E for interrupt and focus target instead of baking.
Or like anything. That's like my biggest pet peeve. Oh, I can't. I'm very busy. Are you serious? I get in raids with people sometimes and I feel like I'm doing fucking everything. Mal, can you get that cleanse? Mal, can you stun that ad? Mal, can you help with the interrupt? Mal is run ragged. Jeez.
When I'm healing, I can only heal, but I only go in story mode because I can barely function as a human being while I'm healing.
Oh, but that's fine. It's fine for story mode you're learning, even hard mode you're learning. You know, tougher stuff, I don't want to hear that shit.
Get interrupted. There is some other news that y'all need to hear, and that does not involve the interrupt key.
Yeah, we do have a lot of really good stuff coming up, and Scya is going to tell us all about it. You heard it here last.
When it comes to events, the current event is Relics of the Gree, which will be ending soon. It's running November 30th to December 7th for level 50 and up. It's a really fun one to jump into, one of the last events before the expansion hits. The expansion will be launching on December 14th. And, well, there's not a lot of news because our biggest piece of news is that, hey, we have an expansion date. We learned a couple more bits and pieces about what's coming up. But the big thing that we're all waiting for is that a baby to be birthed. There is something kind of important for those of you to know who are going to be completing Conquest and want Conquest completed for your very first week of the expansion. So, Conquest is going to be changing from requiring 50,000 points to requiring 100,000 points. That means on December 14th, when the expansion launches and the new Conquest week begins and the old one ends, you'll need to have 100,000 points. So that means in the final week before the expansion, don't shoot for 50, overshoot to 100,000 if you want to go into the expansion and get your Conquest rewards right away on day one.
What a bunch of jackasses. Stupid thing.
I did not realize it was going to work this way, and I'm glad they gave that little disclaimer.
So, well, they weren't forthcoming about it. Somebody asked them, hey, how's Conquest going to work? And they're like, oh, yeah. So about that, you're going to actually need to do 100,000 Conquest points to get your rewards.
Oh, I think that's only for guild rewards, so if you're just playing solo, you don't got to worry about it.
All right, well, or if you don't care, you don't have to worry about it. Anyway.
I would like that baby to come early, but I think it's going to come on time. As long as it's not a late baby, we'll be all right.
When do we get our epidurals for 7.0? Where are the drugs?
On the cartel market.
Ooh, everything good is on the cartel market.
We'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. You've been listening to the Starforge podcast with Scya and Mal. We know you have your choice of podcasts, and you chose the right one. For show notes and other information, visit starforgepodcast.com and hit us up on Twitter at StarforgeCast. We'd love to hear from you. Listen in with Google or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or on Swtorista's YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Friday, so mark your calendar and come join the party. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
I focus target Tyrants because it costs... Scya's telling me to shut up.
We didn't even tell people what target of target and focus target are.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, you're like going in this super awesome... yeah.
Let's rewind. You know why? Because I just assumed that everyone knows what it is.
They're not on by default!
Anyway.
Sorry.